Yeah, any questions?
Good morning, Sanjay. This is Geeta here.
Yeah, good morning, Geeta.
So, why do you think this the basic concept of yoga got so distorted right in the land where it was born? Why do you think
Because
much of
because yoga was not organized as a religion. Yoga did not have a structure. Say, like Christianity has the church, right? Yoga did not have a structure, a supporting organizational structure. Yoga was practiced by yogis who were not interested in the world. So they did not need a support system from the world. So it has been mostly an individualistic approach, and disciples had to pester the guru to teach them, to take them as disciples. That is how it has progressed, yeah. But you see, if you look at Krishna in a battlefield explains the Gita to Arjuna. And the Gita is full of yogic knowledge. It talks of Sankhya, it talks of various kinds of yoga. So yoga as a knowledge was very well known, and people were practicing it. But there was no organized structure. You see, if, say for instance, today if schooling is without schools, if there is no board, what will happen? If there is no government monitoring the boards, what will happen? If there are no universities imparting knowledge, if there are no certificates being issued.
so there's no standardization? You mean like some kind of standardization? Yogis were practicing, but they didn't do it for was it selfish? So they practiced for themselves and they didn't want others to know. Is it?
No. You see, you have to understand evolution, okay? If you look at evolution, I mean, the evolution as explained by Kapil Muni, as followed by even yoga and even to Vedanta to some extent, it all starts from Prakriti. And Prakriti is invisible, unmanifest. Out of Prakriti first comes the cosmic intelligence. Out of that cosmic intelligence comes the Ahankara, the individual doership. And out of that individual doership first comes the Mana. So if you look at the evolution, the cosmic intelligence, the Mahat, is also called the Buddhi, the intellect. So the first creations are the internal creations, the Antahkaran as they call it. The intellect, ego, and the mind. Okay. And then you come to the gross. Then the rajas comes in, and then the tamas comes in, and then you have movement and the physical outside. But inside there it is all sattvic. It is all formless. The first creation is the intellect, the buddhi, the mahat, which is formless, pure, absolutely pure. So we naturally are thrown into a world of tamas and rajas by our creation as a baby. When we become a baby in a mother's womb, we have all these faculties, we have all these capabilities, and then we are thrown out into the world. And then the baby is able to do all that all of us are doing, you know. So he is thrown out into an evolved creation. The journey of yoga is to go back. Go back to the origin. Right. What is the origin is? You have to disengage from the objects, the Panch Mahabhutas, the universe, the physical universe. Then you have to disempower the sense organs. Then you have to disempower the mind. Then you have to disempower the ego. Then you have to disempower the intellect. And then you go back to the Prakriti. Are you getting me?
Right.
So these yogis are on an inward journey. They have left the world behind.
Right. So
Now,
they are on their path to go back to the what do you call, the supreme.
Yeah. But now the beauty is, look at a person like Krishna. Okay, Krishna was in the world but not in the world.
Not in the world. Right.
So that is why he's called the Yogeshwar. Okay, look at Shiva. Shiva is a Param Yogi. Okay, Shiva is not called Yogeshwar. Though Shiva is usually shown sitting in a yogi pose. Why? Because he had cut himself aloof. He had disengaged from the world. He was sitting on Kailasha.
You see, Krishna could be here yet not be.
That's right. So the ideal we need to follow is of Krishna.
Yeah.
Be in the world but not get wet by the world. Yeah.
Like how he says in the chapter 2, like you do your karma, but you don't get attached to the results of the karma.
Yeah. You see the results of the karma are coming totally from Prakriti outside. But the karma which is coming is actually coming from sanskaras. Those sanskaras are coming from the chitta. Right? And the chitta is something which has come from the past life.
Yeah, from your vrittis and your karmas, right?
No. Sanskaras are carried forward also. Okay. Right. So it is something which is transmigratory. You move from one body to the other body with the chitta. So all your sanskaras which are recorded will play out in this life or the next life or 100 lives later. It is bound to play out. Or you destroy those sanskaras. Destroy means burn them. You cannot destroy anything in this creation. That is what Kapil Muni says. And that is what science today says. No matter can be created or destroyed. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. This is something which Kapil Muni said 3,500 years back. So that is why a yogi will never talk about destroying his sanskaras. He will talk about burning his sanskaras.
How is that burning different from destruction?
When you destroy, then there is no trace left of it. When you are burning, there is a root left. It might be very, very deep, but there is a trace of the root left. And there is always a possibility that that root might come out in some further life down the line.
So like burning is like you burn a leaf. When you burn a leaf, it is nothing. Finally, it becomes something like that charcoal or, That
but even that is matter, right? It is a different state of matter, but that is matter. When you talk about destroying, you're talking about leaving no trace of that matter. You're destroying that matter. So destruction is not possible. Anything which has come into this existence will stay. And anything which has not come into this existence can never come. So there is this question of creating something is all bunkam. You cannot create.
So what is there continues to be there.
That's right. What has come, cannot go back.
So everything has already been created. It is
that's right.
Different forms.
That's right. It is just changing its form. It is just going through a state of change. That is what Prakriti is all about. It keeps on changing.
So it's all there.
It's all there.
It's just that many of the things we cannot see.
Yes.
Most of the
not many, quite a bit of it.
Most. That's what I said. Most of the things we can.
Yeah. That's right. You have no idea about what is out there.
Right.
Yeah, and you know why? Because you are ignorant.
Right.
And how to remove that ignorance? Sankhya or yoga. They help you remove that ignorance. Then you become omniscient. Then you become all-knowing. So when you become all-knowing, then what is not seeable also can be seen. What is not seeable with the physical eyes is seeable with the mental eye. What is not seeable with the mental eye is seeable with the spiritual eye. But you're able to see. So that is the ladder in which you progress. As you become more and more pure, as you remove the tamas, as you remove the rajas, you become sattvic. As the degree of sattvicness keeps on increasing, you move towards all-knowingness. That is why enlightened people are supposed to be all-knowing. They go very close to omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence. Their presence is everywhere.
Right.
There
are some people. Yeah, I've heard of one person right in Chennai who actually was able to say like what was happening in a person's house. He's sitting somewhere probably 10 kilometers or 20 kilometers away.
No. This is a siddhi. This is the siddhi which normal yogis have. What I'm talking about is this is covered in the 3rd chapter of Patanjali Yoga Sutras. What I'm talking about is the 4th chapter, the last chapter, where you become a Buddha, where you become a Mahavir, where you transcend Buddha and Mahavir also. So the entire process has been given by Patanjali, And what they say is Patanjali has not created something. He has merely collected knowledge and put it in one place, which is the Patanjali Yoga Sutra.
Good morning, Sanjay ji.
Good morning.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your, efforts for this session and a very passionate delivery as always. In fact, it is very unfortunate that people are not aware about Yoga Sutras, and I also experienced. I think people they might end up buying stuff from Patanjali, but they don't know who was Sage Patanjali. And whenever it's the second most popular scripture after Bhagavad Gita. But people are actually not aware, and people in the West. I was really amazed. You recommended this book by Edwin Bryant. So I was reading the book, and I also visited his website, and there were a lot of videos and very extensive knowledge he has. I have not seen any Indian having that kind of a knowledge on Vedantic philosophy, and he has learned all these shlokas, and then the perspective is really amazing. Now I have 2 questions, sir, for you. One is the courses what you offer in terms of Sankhya Yoga and Samadhi Yoga. What would be the ideal sequence of these courses? I mean, should we start with Sankhya and go on? This is question number 1. And question number 2 also is that as I think initial beginner in the study of Yoga Sutras, how should we go about it and how to practically implement? For example, should we go verse by verse, reading one verse a day and then contemplating? And then how do we implement practically the teachings of Yoga Sutra? These are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Okay, now, first of all, answering your first question. When you are wanting to study, then there are 2 ways of studying. One is do what Patanjali has done. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3, Chapter 4. Or as he calls them, Samadhi Pada, Sadhana Pada, Vibhuti Pada, and Kevalya Pada. Okay. This can be one order. Sankhya. Sankhya is India's first philosophy. And it has disappeared. Not many people know Sankhya. People know about yoga. People have heard about Sankhya. But what is the Sankhya philosophy? People don't know. And even if you are able to get a book and read, you will end up with tremendous amount of confusion because of the historical reasons of Sankhya. Kapil Muni wrote it. It disappeared. Then after about 2,500 years, another Indian, Ishwara Krishna, compiled all the Sankhya knowledge which you could gather. He wrote it. That too disappeared. Fortunately for us, a Chinese translated copy was available, which was brought back to India. And from that, we have translated back into Sanskrit Sankhya Karikas. Okay, it is pretty sad, but that is the way it has happened. So we do not have the original source, number 1. Whatever was mocked up from here and there and collected also got lost. And the Chinese translation was retranslated back into Sanskrit. That is what we have. So it is not easy to follow. And there are not many scholars who can talk on Sankhya. But Sankhya is the most powerful philosophy mankind has ever seen. There is nothing more powerful than Sankhya. Because it has come from the earlier times. Okay, and it has come in its essence, the core. and then people have put on words to it. So it has become something very gross then. All other darshanas have come out of Sankhya darshan. India has 6 darshanas today. They all have an origin in Sankhya. So then they have taken their own paths. So Sankhya by itself, if you do just Sankhya, that by itself can be sufficient if you understand it perfectly. It can create absolute magic in your life. Second, if you do Sankhya and Yoga, then what is the difference? Sankhya talks about a knowledge-based approach. It does not talk about an action-based approach. Yoga is an action-based approach, which is based on the knowledge of Sankhya. So yoga without Sankhya is lame. Okay, yoga stands on Sankhya, but it is action-based. So it has essentially 2 methods, concentration and renunciation or detachment. That is what they are focused on. Okay. Now, in Patanjali Yoga Sutras, the first chapter talks about concentration. It talks about the mind. It talks about thoughts. It talks about management of thoughts, control of thoughts, elimination of thoughts, various levels of concentration of thoughts. So it is a complete science on thoughts, complete study on thoughts. And step by step, it guides you, So if you're on that path, then you know where you are. It is giving you milestones. So that is on thoughts. Now, thoughts by itself can be a standalone study because we are in a world where we are working on thoughts and we are working with concentrated minds. And mind power is coming out of the first chapter. The second chapter is Ashtanga Yoga, where he's talking about the practice. How to practice. Now, when he's talking about practice, this by itself is very interesting because though he calls it Ashtanga Yoga, the 8-limbed yoga, he covers only the first 5 limbs. That is Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, and Pratyahara. Okay. Why? Because these are simple, which an ordinary man, a householder living in the world can do. That means a normal laborer can practice Ashtanga Yoga, the second chapter, and reach till the Pratyahara stage. Pratyahara stage is the stage where the mind is now leaving the world outside and starting its inward journey. When it starts on its inward journey, then that is Pratyahara. So the purpose of Ashtanga Yoga is to bring your mind from the outside to the inside. That's all. So if you want to start your spiritual journey, it could be any means, any method, any religion for that matter. Ashtanga is the guiding principle. The third chapter, which is on Vibhuti Pada, this is on Siddhis essentially. So here he starts with, since he has explained everything about concentration, meditation, and samadhi in the first chapter. So there are only 3 sutras on this. The first sutra is on concentration. The second sutra is on meditation. The third sutra is on samadhi. And the fourth sutra is how to do all 3 of them together. And then the Siddhis start. Then the science of Siddhis start. And then the Siddhis start. So if somebody is interested in knowing how to attract extraordinary power, mental power, to be able to manipulate the physical universe and its laws, then Siddhi Yoga is the place for you. Okay, if you are looking at phenomenal achievements in life, then Siddhi Yoga is the place for you. So this is the third chapter. The fourth chapter is a chapter on Kaivalya. This chapter is meant for those people who are not interested in personal power, are not interested in personal attainments through Siddhi, though they might have extraordinary mind power. They are interested in going beyond. When I say beyond, you are able to come out of the cycle of birth and death. You are able to come out of getting born in these 84 lakh yonis, 84 lakh yoni jo bolte hain. You become free from that. there your misidentification of the Atma with the Prakriti is completely removed. You are able to see the discrimination between them, the difference between them. There is a power of discernment by which you can differentiate them. That state, when you reach, you become omniscient, you become omnipotent, and you control time. You overpower time. Kala comes under your control. Shanas come under your control. And then you get 100% detached. That is the last stage of samadhi and detachment. It is called Dharma Megha Samadhi. In that samadhi, there is 100% detachment. You have got nothing to do with the world now. So till you reach there, that is probably the third last or the fourth last sutra of 196 Patanjali Sutras. Till then, you are in the world. But once you cross the door of the Dharmic Samadhi, then you are into Kevalya. Now you are liberated from this universe and Prakriti. Now you are liberated from all existence. Now your Atma is free, permanently free. You are absolutely independent. And you never come back into Prakriti. Okay, so that is the fourth stage. Now, when you talk of people like the Tirthankars, I mean from the Jain sect of the Jain religion, Mahavir Jain, Parasnath, and all the 24 Tirthankars of the last series. There are many series they have. So all of them had Kevalya Gyan. Kevalya Gyan means they knew about Kevalya. They could enter Kevalya. But they did not experience absolute liberation the way Patanjali talks about. Slight differentiation in the Jain understanding and Patanjali's understanding. But broadly, the concept remains the same. So if you're interested in knowing the philosophy at the higher level, and then there are 10 sutras where the understanding of the mind from the Hindu perspective and from the Buddhist perspective, they are discussed. Here you find subtle differences which Patanjali has intentionally brought out because Buddhism was prominent that time. So he wanted to show the superiority of the Hindu approach over the Buddhist approach and where the Buddhists would be lacking in the future on that path. So he talks about it, and there are commentators commenting on it. So that is for a higher level study. But again, the more you stretch your mind, the more your mind gets stretched, and then it stays stretched. And if you look at it from the perspective of the word Brahman, which Vedanta uses, Brahman means an expanded mind. Bra is expansion, mana is mind. So the goal of human life should be to constantly keep on expanding the mind. As you keep on expanding the mind, you will find you will reach a state of no mind. And that state of no mind is the state of Ishvara, where there is no Prakriti, where there is no form, where there is no Tamas, where there is no Rajas, where there is no Sattva also. All Akara disappears. So that is broadly the perspective I am giving you. So the fourth chapter is meant for people who are deep into spirituality or psychology or philosophy. So broadly, that is it. Yeah. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, thank you so much for the profound answer and detailed explanation of the chapters. I think it will be really useful. And should we go by verse and how to practically implement? If you can just throw some light on that. I mean, what should be our routine? I mean, should we practice all these Ashtanga yoga and then practice meditation gradually, or read one verse by verse? I mean, practically, how can we implement in our day-to-day life living?
I would say, I will share my method. You can start with Yama, the 5 Yamas, that is Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, and Aparigraha. Get into that mode. Get into a mode of being less and less violent in thoughts, words, and deeds. Get into a mode of speaking the truth as much as possible. Speak the truth only when it is not going to hurt anybody. It should not happen that you're speaking the truth but hurting somebody, because these yamas are in an order of priority, order of importance. So the most important is ahimsa. Second important is Satya. Third important is Astheya. Fourth important is Brahmacharya. Fifth is Aparigraha. So that is the order you can follow. And simultaneously, when Patanjali talks about Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, so look at your thoughts, because your thoughts will be constantly accompanying you. And even on these Ahimsa, Satya and the other yamas, thoughts will be coming, right? So the first chapter, I would suggest read till the 11th sutra, where he explains the first sutra is very important, okay? Apply your mind to it and take out your meaning, because it talks about yoga in the now. So how are you perceiving it will decide how easy it will turn out for you. Second is defining yoga. Third is about what happens when there are no vrittis. Fourth is what happens when there are vrittis. And then it defines the various types of vrittis. And it defines 5 of them. So then now you know where the thoughts are coming from. So if you are able to keep a tab on where the thoughts are coming from, you will be able to purify your thoughts. You will be able to remove rajas and tamas from the thoughts in the source stage itself. And then you will realize everything is a memory game. Everything is coming from your memory. There's nothing coming from anywhere outside. So the moment you start keeping zero memory, you travel light in memory, you will find you have become half a yogi already. Because you're not carrying the past, you're not carrying right knowledge, wrong knowledge, you're not carrying imagination. And since there is nothing there, so you're not dreaming also in your sleep. So there are no source of thoughts coming to you. And whatever thoughts are coming from the outer world through the sense organs, you are sort of neutral to them because you're keeping a watch. You're not getting attached. So then automatically life becomes very easy, very simple. So I would say 50% yoga or 50% of a yogi you will become by following the first 11 sutras and the 5 yamas. And then the journey becomes slightly, I would say, slow, because then it starts taking time to add on. Niyamas also you might be able to add on quickly, but then the practice is what takes time. But if the yama and niyama is 100% right, then the practice can just magically happen. Magically happen. In the first chapter, he talks about sleep time, when divine powers or divine yogis come to you and download information to you. So you will experience that. Whatever questions you have, you will get answers. Whatever questions you don't have, but it is going to help you in the path, those answers will come. And I will suggest practice only one meditation. Don't practice a wide variety of meditation. I call it the Purush Prakriti meditation. This is something which has been prescribed by Kapil Muni in Sankhya, where he says, imagine this world as a forest. And there is the Purusha. You see, the Purusha can only see. He is called a Drashta. He is called a seer. The Atma can only see. The Atma cannot take any action. It can see because it has the power of consciousnness. So it becomes conscious. So it can see. But it is lame. You can imagine it has no legs. And Prakriti cannot see, but Prakriti has legs. So Prakriti is blind in the sense that Prakriti can do anything without control. It can unleash its fury on you without any control. Now, there's something very beautiful. I mean, this is something which Sankhya says, this is something which Patanjali says, but we don't understand it. He says, absolutely beautiful thing. He says, Prakriti was at rest. When Purush came close to Prakriti, Prakriti got triggered. Prakriti got excited. That is why they use the male name and the female name here, Purush and the Prakriti. Prakriti is a female and Purush is a male. So when the Purush comes close to Prakriti, Prakriti gets excited. Rajas sets in. And then there's a huge growth of Sattva or Mahat or Buddhi or intellect. And then everything evolves. So he says, Prakriti has come into existence to satisfy all desires for Purusha, to give all experiences to the Purusha. And it wants to finish that as soon as possible and go back to its original state of sleep, equilibrium. And Purusha is carrying sanskaras. I mean, Purusha is moving from one life to another life, but sanskaras are being carried. So those sanskaras are getting executed into karma. So Prakriti is only fulfilling all sanskaras for the Purusha so that it can free itself fast and finally give liberation to Purusha and go back. And Purusha wants Prakriti so that he can get satisfied, because Purusha cannot do anything himself. So he says both of them, if they team up, if Purusha gets on the shoulders of Prakriti, then Purusha can show the path to Prakriti where it wants to go, and Prakriti will take him there at the earliest, because Prakriti wants to get rid of Purusha at the earliest. Okay. So this is the first thing you must do. You must go into a meditative state and imagine that your Atma is in sync, is in synergy, is in alignment with the entire Prakriti, with that massive, infinitely powered Prakriti, with that eternal, permanent Prakriti. Prakriti is permanent, but the evolutes of Prakriti are not permanent. So you imagine that, and sit on top of Prakriti and give your wishes and meditate that, think that, visualize that, fantasize that. Whatever you are telling Prakriti, Prakriti is doing it for you in a jiffy, just like that. You will find a tremendous change in the rate of change of things happening in your life. Your life will become magical. It will go supersonically fast, beyond your imagination. It will go far, far beyond the speed of light also. Because Prakriti wants to do it instantly now. She wants to get rid of you. So she'll say, okay, what next? What next? What next? What next? And then you will get tired. And then she'll say, fine, tata, bye-bye now. Now I have finished my performance. I'm going back. You get off from my Prakriti. Get off from my territory. And get liberated. Stay alone. Become Keval. You know, अकेले हो जाओ, भाग जाओ ऐसे, भगा देती है. तो ये सबसे powerful concentration, visualization, thinking, fantasizing, imagining exercise है. It can create wonders. Or you will be knowing that you are separate from Prakriti because you're sitting on top of Prakriti. You're not one. Are you getting me? I don't know how many people are there, but are you getting me?
Yes, sir. I think thank you so much for sharing your experience, and definitely, I think for a beginner like me, I think these tips will be very, very helpful. And yama, niyama, all those things, if we are able to practice and purify our mind, definitely, I think we can progress faster in spirituality.
Yeah, but I will again say you have to do the courses. Okay, you have to go through the entire Patanjali Yoga Sutras. You are trying to hack it up. I gave you a few hacks, but those are short-term hacks. Okay, you need to get a proper grounding.
Surely, sir. I will surely enroll for the course.
Okay. Yeah. So can we close? We have had a long session.
गुड मॉर्निंग सर. नमस्ते.
हाँ, नमस्कार मंजू जी, बोले कैसी है?
बस बढ़िया सर. एकदम आपके तरीके से चलते चलते बहुत चीजें महसूस होने लगी है.
अच्छा, वेरी गुड.
अभी जो आपने लास्ट का बताया, एकदम सच्ची में सांख्य योग का जो ये पूरा एकदम, मतलब हम लोग प्रैक्टिस थोड़ा सा करने लगे, इतना सुनते सुनते तो एकदम फील होने लगा है.
सांख्य बहुत पावरफुल है. सांख्य से ऊपर कुछ नहीं है, सब फेल है.
और अब एकदम नियम भी समझ में आने लगे हैं कि कितना इम्पोर्टेंट है.
इम्पोर्टेंट है.
पहले सिर्फ मतलब जानते थे, पर निकल जाता था, करते थे या नहीं करते थे प्रैक्टिस. अब एकदम कॉन्स्टेंटली एकदम मन रहता है कि नहीं, प्रैक्टिस में रहे, क्योंकि उसका अंत रिजल्ट समझ में आ रहा है.
नहीं, बढ़िया है. देखिए, इसमें ना सत्संग का असर पड़ता है. आपका संग कौन है, तो संग में रहिए, राइट थिंकिंग पीपल के बीच में रहिए, तो आपको फिर बेनिफिट वो मिलता रहता है कॉन्स्टेंटली. कोई भी फोरम, कोई भी ऐसी अपॉर्चुनिटी हो, वहां पर रहिए.
सर मुझे तो लगता है बस अभी आप ही के साथ है, नहीं तो कंफ्यूजन हो जाएगा.
अच्छा ठीक है, हमारे साथ रहिए. क्या कहीं ना कहीं रहिए, बस वो इम्पोर्टेंट है.
हाँ, बस एक ही जगह ठीक है. ज्यादा होने से कंफ्यूजन सही हो जाता है.
नहीं, ठीक है. प्रैक्टिस जरूरी है. रेगुलर प्रैक्टिस करते रहिए तो सब अपने आप होता रहता है. हम लोग ये सोचते हैं कि ये ईंटों पत्थरों और स्टील की बनी हुई दुनिया है ना। ये ईंटों पत्थरों स्टील की बनी हुई दुनिया नहीं है। ये एक चेतन जगत है, एक कॉन्शियस वर्ल्ड है, और इसको रूप हम देते हैं अपने सोच से, अपने सोच की शक्ति से, अपने सोच की सीमाओं से। ये जिस दिन हमको समझ में आ जाएगा उस दिन सारी चीजें समझ में आती हैं। और हम आत्मा है, ये शरीर, ये मन, ये मेरा नहीं है, ये धरती का है, ये यही छोड़ के जाना है।
राइट।
चलिए ठीक है, तो कैन वी क्लोज?
Only one small thing.
हाँ,
What is the correct word? Is it yoga or yog? Which is the correct actually? Or it's language? Yeah.
Some people call it yog, some call it jog, some call it yoga. The foreigners call it yoga because
Right.
So that name does not matter, you know.
Okay.
As long as you are understanding the knowledge and applying it, so life will be true.
Right.
Absolutely true. Yeah, you can become a master of your creation. You can literally create anything you want. That is the power of what this knowledge is all about.
Okay.